Hello and welcome to the SIS Podcast. I'm Francis, here with Jake, and today we have the special guest, Mr. Luke Finlay, the beautiful man over to our right. He's a mastering engineer, live sound engineer, musician, mixer, and he does a whole bunch of stuff, the multi-talented. Thanks for coming on, man.
All good.
Yeah. I think Jake's got a hard-hitting one he wants to start off with.
Shit.
Now, from what I understand, you are like a team snipe. A quick Google search of you would tell everybody that you like snipe for Bird of the Year. Is that not? Is that not true?
Yeah. No, I love the snipe.
Yeah.
It's good. I used to be like Team Kidadu, like through and through, but like
You should be ashamed of yourself.
kind of like I love the big lads. They're like they got the white singlet on. They get real drunk. They just fly around and be like annoying. And like it's kind of like New Zealand in a bird.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, Kidadu can kind of. I started to shift into like Bird of the Year every year as like your number one has to be someone that like hasn't won. It's got to be like an underdog people don't know about and like.
And about wasn't that for you?
The Kidadu, I think Kidadu was like vote 3 and Snipe
Right.
was like 1 and then the Dotterels like are up in there as well.
Oh yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Okay, I know 2 of those.
Yeah. And I hope one of those is the Kidadu.
Yeah. Now, Bird of the Year is never something that I fully dove in on. I feel like I'm missing out. I see it every year. I see it. People going handies on it.
Should get all over it, eh? Did you see the bat won this year, right?
Yeah.
He's on my shirt.
Oh, right on.
Yoza?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that, betraying your cause.
I didn't know how to feel about it, eh? I was like, for one, like I'm all here for it. On the other, I'm like, he's not a bird.
Yeah.
But yeah. He flies. He's close enough. He definitely needs more recognition, which is like what it's all about. So.
Dude, like the background for that was like he'd message me. He goes, "Oh, so this is what Luke's into, So if you wanted to do a little bit of research behind Luke," and I was like, "All right, yeah, I've already done that." And the most notable thing that I came up was like, we could debate the bird.
Yeah, let's get on it.
So you run, you are sort of Primal Mastering.
Yeah.
What is because mastering, it's always been, not always, but it's like, it was a bit of a dark art kind of for a while. Whereas like mixing, there's a bit more of like technical process to it. Whereas mastering, at least originally, was a little bit more fluid and loose. You still think it's that way as well?
Well, mastering was like one of those things where mastering at its core, like I still think there's like the 2 kind of main veins of mastering. There's like proper mastering, which comes from more like originally how mastering came around, and then like the creative side of mastering is sort of like pre-mastering. So like mastering originally came from, even like getting back to, I think we like touched on all this stuff when I did an SAE, but like original mastering and stuff came from like, they had guys who took basically transferring from mediums, so like from like tape to vinyls to like do like the master discs and stuff, and it would usually be like an assistant or something that would be the guy who would go and make sure they could change across the formats and they could push it to release. And then after a while they kind of realized that there was people that could do this a little bit better. And if they did it a little bit better, they could get more headroom, they could get louder vinyls, they could get louder cuts. And then from there, it became much more of a specialist thing, and they started getting specific people to do it. And then they realized that there was creativity involved. If you made some tweaks to things, you could kind of start getting it better and better. And then from there, like mastering and pre-mastering was born. Because mastering in itself is like preparation for formats. It's making sure, it'll just make sure it translates well to all mediums. And then there's like, the creative pre-mastering thing, which is what most people today know as mastering. You say mastering to anyone, everyone's like, like multi-band compression and saturation and all that sort of stuff. And those tools I don't usually touch too much of, to be honest. But I forgot where the question started. I had a real shit memory.
No, you're good, mate. Because what got you into it? But just pull the mic a bit closer to the edge of the table.
I'll pull the mic closer to me. I keep standing back, eh?
Yeah,
I'm not used to being around a microphone.
Hearing your own voice like that.
Real intimate, baby.
Yeah. I studied SAE, and I think like at the end of I can't remember if it's the end of the diploma or the degree, but you go through and you master like all of the projects you've done throughout the year. Yeah. And it was like, mastering the first one you're doing like Project Studio Classic and digital and kind of compiling it all. And I remember being like real interested, real like intrigued by mastering. It like once I'd heard about it, it was something that I thought I was going to latch onto. I was like, this looks real cool, looks real interesting. it's kind of like, I kind of like the vibe of it. And then I did it as our final assignment, I think on the diploma one, and I fucking hated it. I really didn't like it. Working on my own stuff, I was just like, because I hadn't developed the mindset for it yet. I'm sitting there working on the stuff and being like, I could just go back and tweak the kick, or like, why can't I do all this stuff? And just all the kind of, especially at that point, it's all the first projects I've ever done, and all the thoughts and feelings of all of the imperfections in like the tracks that I've done kind of all came around, and I kind of dropped it and didn't really do too much, didn't really think about it. And then it got round to somewhere in the degree, and someone we were doing stuff with kind of turned around and was like, I remember you talking a bunch about the mastering. Do you want to master the tracks that I did? And I was like, well, yeah, I'll have a crack at it. And it was the first time I'd worked on something that I hadn't done.
Yeah.
And hooked like straight away. I loved it. I couldn't stop. Just like, started reaching out to like anyone that was doing stuff at SA, anyone in my classes, and basically just trying to
get your hands on as much as you could.
Get my hands on as much as I could, which is real interesting, because originally when we started learning about mastering, it's always a thing you're told that like mastering engineers have the most experience, the best speakers, the nicest rooms, and I was not that guy, but I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a Kiwi DIY kind of attitude anyway. You know, fuck it, I'm going to do it.
Well, it's always real interesting. I still always have that thought in the back of my mind of like, there's all these people, you look at the guys at like Sterling Sound and stuff, like amazing Northwood Acoustics rooms and immaculate monitors and stuff. But then like one of my favorite mastering engineers has always been like, I really like the guys like Ian Shepherd and Bob Katz and stuff. And Ian Shepherd masters, I think, on like bookshelf speakers, and Bob Katz sits on the floor, which I found real funny. I was looking around recently and I was like, he's got like big like Dyne Audio M2s or something, and the tweeters have got to be like way above his head. But yeah, he sits on the floor, which I find real funny, because that's what I used to do when I first started mastering. I bought these big JBL 3-way monitors out of the Manor or somewhere. I got these old like big JBL 3-way monitors, and I didn't have any stands to put them on, and they weigh like 50 kilos or something, and I sit on the floor mastering, and then I come around all this time later and I look and I'm like, Bob Katz is sitting on the floor. So I must have been doing something right.
Yeah. Because you came up a bit through COG. Yeah. As far as, so like, how did that relationship all come around? Because as far as New Zealand's concerned, COG's like...
Chris is the guy.
Yeah.
COG's the place.
Yeah.
And do they sit on the floor?
He does not sit on the floor. He's got one of those real nice,
you wouldn't be able to touch all those knobs.
Chairs. So I remember like, once I started to get set into mastering, like heaps of people at SA kind of like mentioned Chris to me and stuff. Like my two favorite kind of like local engineers that I knew that did mastering at the time was like, I really like Chris Chetlin's work from COG, and Dave Chech as well. I was like, loved his work and stuff too. And then I was up at like the offices one day just talking to like Tanith and things, and then I think Huia was there, obviously like Chris' partner, and she works at COG and stuff as well, and runs like integrity promotions and things at the time, and just got talking to Huia, and Huia was like, oh yeah, come around and do some stuff. And I ended up starting to do things at COG through this website that we're doing called Gear Shoot, because they were kind of just trying to find someone to come and help with doing Gear Shoot. If people don't know what Gear Shoot is, it was like a big like online website where we sample in a ton of gear, so you can go just see what a bunch of different gear sounds like up against each other and things. So I started working at COG through that, and then Chris got me on doing like studio intern stuff, and then just revolved into doing a bunch of mixing there, doing vocal records, doing tracking. I did a few post-production series there, so I did like a season for like Multi TV and did quite a few things. So I never actually did mastering there.
Okay.
But I did spend a lot of time like, always trying to, basically I spent as much time trying to dive into analog gear and delve into as much stuff as I could, learning from Chris. And then, did quite a bit of mixing and stuff there, but never actually mastered there, which was always interesting. I'd have a lot of people being like, oh yeah, it must have been great mastering at COG. And I'm like, no. Like I never mastered there. It was always on my rig, but I always made sure I've always been very anti. There'll be certain people online. Thankfully, it's something I've never really seen from New Zealand, which is really, really great. But you see people internationally that will go pose in other people's studios and then post it all up on their shit and just like kind of be very grey areaed about the fact that it's not theirs. And I always tried to be like, if anyone was ever kind of like mildly mentioned it, it was always like, no, I don't master at COG. It's my own rig. I do my own stuff.
Yeah. I think that is a big difference between New Zealand and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
There's like a level of authenticity. Yeah.
There's always heaps of guys online now that you see. Like I always see it post up online, and people will be like, "I worked on," there'll be like this guy sitting there being like, "I did these records and stuff, and I did this," and you're like, "I worked with Kanye and Adele and this," and you go through and you're like, "But you didn't mix it. You might have been second assist. You might have just been the guy doing the de-essing on RX for the record. You didn't." But people like, like I'll never turn around and be like, I did. I remember, like I've done just stuff like compiling DDP images for some records for like labels and stuff. But I'll never turn around and be like, I did this record. Like it wasn't me.
Yeah.
But and I'm like, I always try to get past that kind of thing.
So many people are like credit hunting.
Yeah.
And I'll credit sniping as well.
Yeah.
And just trying to make them seem bigger than they are to try and get those artists that aren't quite in the know.
Yeah.
So the artists that are sort of on the come up, that don't quite fully grasp it yet, it's like, cool, that's where I can make at least decent money. It's not like early bands that have got nothing going on.
Yeah.
It's bands on that, or artists on that sort of build up, and they're like, they won't know any different.
Yeah, just playing that name game to grab things.
Yeah. I feel like that's a perception thing that we were talking about before this. We were talking about how just this level of perception of how you're supposed to be acting within the industry, how you're supposed to be behaving to get ahead. And like when you see stuff going overseas and people are being a bit more, I mean, they have a whole facility for influencers that is a fake private jet for them to pose in so that they can get there. You know what I mean?
It's the studios might have that. Yeah, come pose in our studio. Pretend you don't have a Scarlett 2i. It's always been so weird seeing that for international.
No hate on the Scarletts,
like,
though.
No. They like New Zealand's like such a small scene. Like it'd be terrible to try fake that sort of stuff over here. But
they do, and that's that's the thing. Is that we want to be seen internationally, and so several people do,
I mean, New Zealand's small scene it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And there's it's definitely a vibe, especially domestically, with like the grass is greener on the other side. And so that's where they start to shop out a lot of the jobs, maybe mixing. They might track it themselves and send it overseas for someone to mix.
That's something
and send the files and stuff as well.
It's something we've like always found over here is like I've never wanted to buy into it because it's something I pride myself on as like an engineer and stuff. Is like I really care about people's music, people's content, people's art that they send, and like I never want to be like more than like 2 steps away from someone. Like email me, call me. If I could turn up at my house, maybe don't turn up at my house at weird times. But like, like that extra step. And there's like people get this whole thing of like my track was mastered in LA, and it was like New Zealand still kind of, or like just some artists and stuff will still have this weird thing of being like, but that it's not like it doesn't make it better necessarily. No. It doesn't make it more important. Like you can just pay to get it done. Like you just kind of paid more money and stuff. And like I'm always just so big on like the keep it local. And we have it's not a thing of like like New Zealand's always been an interesting one because of like a small scene. We kind of have like a higher rotation of engineers and stuff because it's harder to stay and work over here. So like maybe like years ago, maybe it was a bit harder to find people to do stuff at like, what people called, like an international level. But now like there's no excuses. Like we have that standard here.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to have to go overseas, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the more we do stuff local, the more we develop people and the less need we do have to go overseas. And it's just, I've always been big on like,
keeping it here.
Part of it is like, sweet, it gets me work and stuff if people keep it local. But like keeping it local to me is like really, really important.
It's everything grows together.
Yeah.
And if you start to feed things out to different locations, one of those steps in the way just starts to get, one of those steps along the way gets kind of left behind.
Yeah.
Which then just it ends up leaving this big gap that people would want to fill, but if there's no market for it, nobody's going to step in, no one will learn, and then that void just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, especially when it causes people to leave the industry as well, because like this scene's always, or this industry's always had, I mean, you count the amount of people that drop out at certain ages, and it's not just like, oh, this person doesn't work anymore, it's that's that information that's lost. That's more information that'll never be passed down, sort of thing, which is, why I'm so grateful to have worked with a bunch of people that are like still around in the scene. But you know, and like you look at, it was the thing that I always looked at, especially when I started out, was like trying to find people to like, you know, a lot of like audio is just like, you know, learning how to do things. And if there's not people to learn this stuff off, how do we get to these international standards? Which is real cool. Like guys like Greg Haver started obviously doing like the producer series.
Yeah,
which brings these guys over, and like, man, bringing people like that to New Zealand, like it has.
Was it Sylvia Massey came?
Sylvia Massey. The first one was like, I think the first one was Dave Aringer and Guy Massey. I'm hoping I'm remembering his name right. Which was, I went to that one, that was amazing. And then it was like, I think it was, Sylvia Massey's come over, Ramesh Dodangoda's come over, David Wrench has come over, which was, and like just kind of feeling the quality, or like not even like quality, but just like, you know, like
their vibe,
the production value of New Zealand just like kind of like picked up off the back, you know, like the tips and tricks I picked up of those just made my productions like better. And having these people here, and it's like, this is what comes out of scenes where people have the ability to work for this long and have the ability to pass down knowledge through these like systems. Showing the impact that had on New Zealand engineers is more reason why we just need to like
keep it here.
Yeah,
for sure. Because one of the things, like, yes, there's YouTube. Yes, there's a whole bunch of like, and there's like URM and stuff like that, which do these really, really cool and in-depth sort of methods of learning. But it's not quite the same as being there with the person and feeling that energy and seeing often all the nuances that either get cut out or are done differently because they know it's being filmed.
Yeah. I also feel like learning off YouTube was more viable like 5 years ago. It's interesting now because there's been a few things like I did some stuff with like Ariki where we were like teaching people audio production and stuff, and I was like, this is just like kind of like diving deeper into being like, this is interesting to me as to why people are coming to us for this and like, you know, paying for it and stuff, when like this stuff is all available everywhere, but people don't want to sift through tons of stuff online, or, you know, it's so hard to fight through, you know, there's misinformation on everything. But same with audio now and stuff, like online. It was like, cool, you can learn off YouTube, but for every one video where someone's telling you how to do something correctly, there's 20 that are completely fucking wrong. And like, I'll go through stuff now and just kind of like, you know, scroll through and then just be like article upon article of just shit that's wrong. So it's like learning off YouTube and stuff now is like, it's a fucking minefield. You can go completely astray.
What kind of sucks is that, like, when we were learning off of YouTube, at like kind of the height of that, we hooked up with people who were kind of a bit more legit, and they were, and so as they grow, we got anybody new coming to the platform, anybody new coming to audio engineering is going to be thrown. Like, that's how I know who Sylvia Massey is. Is her tutorials and kind of like her in the studio doing some selfies going, oh, so me doing some weird fucked up shit. You know, like, you don't know that those are the people you need to be following, whereas YouTube's kind of... there's, you know, and it's same with there's like a lot of, there's a lot of like fake people on there. There's a lot of con artists on there that will try to be like, you know, look, I faked doing this record. Here's what I did and all that sort of stuff. But it's always been... learning off like YouTube and stuff is just an absolute minefield now. And like, you know, again, it kind of gets back into that learning from people thing. Like, there's no way I would be in the same position I am for knowing what I know for mastering unless I'd learned off Chris. And if Chris hadn't made mastering a viable thing for him to do in New Zealand without, you know, the New Zealand industry supporting him and him supporting the industry, I wouldn't know fucking half of what I do. I wouldn't have been set on the path to know what I do from learning people like him.
Cascade.
I mean, I could have, you know, like I could have gone and, you know, watched a million tutorials online and, you know, read every one of Bob Katz's books on mastering and stuff, but I never would have learned from it. And it's this weird thing of like, you know, when you like grow up to like doing education at just like school and stuff, and you start to get all these things of that people are like, everyone learns in different ways, and you get your like creative learners and you get your hands-on learners, and they've kind of just pushed that aside again. We got obsessed with that for a little bit when it was like kind of accessible, and now they're like, iPads, guess what? No one's a fucking hands-on learner anymore. We're like, digital content is how we consume now. If you learn hands-on, you're pushed aside again. And we were like, they were trying to tap into that for a few years, and now it's like gone. And that's how I learn. Like
learn by doing.
Yeah, I can like read stuff in there, but like I'm also like I got a pretty bad memory and stuff, and I learn just by like doing things refreshes my memory. The fact that I'm like hands on and stuff, and like if I've never been hands on with a ton of gear, and I like to be able to like modulate and touch things myself, and see how it feels and affects things, and you can't
See, like
do that,
twisting a knob on a compressor versus like clicking.
Well, and you can also, someone online is like, if you do this, it'll sound like this. And it's like, well, what about halfway between? And how does that do this?
Yeah.
And I would want to do that with these spectrometers open and see how these things happen and stuff. And it's just like, there's also like a back and forth interaction that you can't get from a lot of these. Like some things are trying to get at, like URM's great. It's like, learn this stuff, but then we can give you mixed feedback and kind of back and forth, and they've got the forums thing going. But yeah, it's like it
has its limitations as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of limitations. It's kind of hard to learn online now.
Yeah.
It's getting, and then I'm finding there's more and more people that are trying to, because heaps of people I've had people being like, are you going to teach production? Are you going to teach mixing? Are you going to teach like mastering and stuff? And I'm kind of like, but it's like, you never want to turn around and be like, no, I don't. But sometimes you're like, but I always find it surprising that I get asked for it when it's kind of all online for free. And then I'm like, well, obviously people respect my knowledge and that sort of thing as well. But yeah, it's like people are really turning away from like just free content.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Pay for your content.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way to, especially to make it viable now, because there is so much content out there. All the potential ad revenue or whatever that may be that was supporting it before is now spread across so many more places, so you're not getting the same returns. You're like, well, this isn't viable for me to do without having like a join feature or anything like that.
And people are now paying for that interaction and that trust is what I find the most thing. People want to sometimes like, we did some like teaching things and stuff, and some people were paying for it just so they could be like, listen to my tracks and see what you think of them. Because you can't watch a YouTube tutorial and then be like, how does this sound? Like you can't just send the guy, like you guys, like this is how you mix drums. You can't just send him your thing and be like, hey, but what do you think of my drums? Like,
Because you touched on it a little bit before with the actual feeling things and like you're saying, turning knobs and just that kind of feel as opposed to being too digital or too in the box. Yeah. And so you yourself work in a bit of like a hybrid kind of setup. Is that something that you always wanted to do? Or like, did you always have an affinity for analog? Or is it something you kind of learned coming through?
It's been a trip of both. So like I'm obsessed with gear and I will never not be constantly buying gear. Like even
straight up
guitar playing days, it was like I had to have a huge pedal board. I never had the biggest pedal board, guys like
you were up there though.
Skinny hobos and shit had like twice the pedal board.
Because they had two pedal boards.
Yeah, and I'd rock up with my pedal board and put it down, and then Quinn the Human would come out and play, and I'd be like,
and there'd be 300 of them on stage.
Shit, man. Making me feel bad because I own like Boss pedals, and I'm like, sorry, I'll go get some more custom built stuff. But yeah, no, I've always been like obsessed with gear. I really like it. It's so interesting to me. It's always been just stuff that I really like. And then it's something that was definitely learned as well. So like working at COG and like hearing and understanding how the gear worked, and then fully going through into doing stuff at like Gear Shoot and like. So when we did Gear Shoot, like for a nutshell, if people don't know, it's like, we would go through and we would get like every single analog compressor we could find and then compare it up against every like digital compressor. So you can go get like the Waves 1176 compressor and test it at like a 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1 and Nuke at like 4 different attack and release settings on like 56 different samples, all loudness normalized. And you can go hear how that sounds against like the UAD one, the TDR one. You can hear it against like an actual fucking real Blue Stripe and all that sort of stuff. And like listening and working through stuff in Gear Shoot really made me understand like the subtle differences in analog gear. Like a lot of these, there's a lot of like emulations and stuff that are close.
Yeah.
But I'd almost say there's like flaws in analog gear that make it better.
Yeah.
There's like mismatched
the imperfections
things.
are what makes it perfect.
Which is interesting because I remember we talked to like a plugin manufacturer about it once, and we were kind of like, hey, are you like these slight differences? Say you've got like you've got like a massive passive or something, and you go boost like 1 dB on the left and right channel. It was like, well, it's not going to be exactly the same on the left and right channel, because the Q might be slightly wider on the left channel, the phase might be slightly different on the right channel, and you stack that up over multiple differences.
Yeah.
and all of a sudden your track's wider and has sheen, and the phase makes it interesting, and lush. And there's like some companies are really getting, and like when we approached this guy, he was like, "Why would we make broken plugins?" And we're like, "That's not the point. We're not making like." There's some companies that have like gone for it in leaps and bounds, and so many more, like Brainworks with their like TMT software, which is all like patented and stuff. Like that's pretty cool. I really like it. Some of it's a little bit too aggressive for mastering. You kind of go through and you're like, oh, it's like a dB difference, which like my gear would never be that calibrated. Like I'm talking like micro differences. My gear's not like a fucking dB out on stuff. But yeah, and then just there's certain things that like plugins haven't been able to capture, like how I match my impedance across my like mastering chain, and just like, you know, driving pieces of gear into each other and transformers and stuff. There's so much to it. It's something I've always become more and just the more and more I've learned, the more and more I've realized, and then the more analog gear I get in my setup, like I couldn't go back. It sucks to do analog sometimes, you know, like finish, take photos, redo it, bounce it in, take photos, redo it, recalibrate my system, like, you know, just constantly checking everything. One pot might be a bit freaky one day, constant repair costs and everything, but like
humidity effect.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other. Yeah, you're like, oh, I'll quickly master this track, and you're like, I gotta let my rig heat up so it's stable, and then, but yeah, like I wouldn't have it any other way. Like to me, it's also just a workflow thing. Like I could get into control surfaces and stuff and match like everything up and do that, but it's just control surfaces have never like. I've got this. I got this Inductor EQ built by Ecodec. And the knobs are the most satisfying thing. So this huge clunk on like a rotary strip. And like, I've never had someone give me a control surface and it go like,
is it all stainless looking as well?
And it's like fuck getting a control surface for that. They don't feel cool. Like, and you know, and I can be doing multiple things at once. I can be seeing how this reacts with this.
Yeah.
But then also this and this, and like, you know, like there's really cool ways to do it. Like I've always been real impressed with like. There's all like the Slate Raven stuff, and they've got like Slate Batch Commander and all those things. And I've seen like Troy from like SDL has got these things where he'll like, you know, like Pro Tools is amazing. You can be like, I'll view just this group, and then all these will pop up, and it'll automatically make all these plugins pop up, and you can have tons of things like that set up. But like, I'm just not that way inclined. I'd rather just it's there in front of me, and I like just, you know, like not having too many tools and stuff as well. But yeah, like my mastering rig has gone from being probably like, you know, when I first started, it was like a couple EQs and compression, and then kind of changed throughout the years. And now, except for a couple things, I'm pretty much like 90% analog. And
sweet.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever get an outboard limiter. But but yeah, no,
you say that now, but it's the gear thing, right?
Yeah. If one comes up,
I mean, there was like, who was it? Someone floating around had a like the original like Waves L2s, which I hate, but I kind of want it anyway.
Yeah. Was it gas? Gear acquisition syndrome?
100%.
Yeah, straight up.
I've got bad gas.
What? It used to be okay when I had guitar pedals, because you're like, oh man, and you got on the pedal farm and like buy some for $100, and now I'm like, kind of want a new mastering EQ, but they're like fucking $6,000.
Yeah. It's a bit of a hard sell. Yeah. Because as far as you're on the digital side of it, what kind of thing? So the limiter. What other stuff do you kind of lean to as far as on the digital side?
Digital side, there's like, if I use multiband's one of those things that people always think about in mastering. They're like, multiband is like a mastering thing. I don't really like it, but like if I'm gonna use it, multiband is a digital thing for me.
Is that because of the convenience factor of it? Because
there's not many multiband outboard units. There's like a couple of them, but yeah, to me there's nothing analog that can do it in the same way. I'll do de-essing can be quite common in mastering as well. It's like, again, just another type of multi-banding, but I'll do de-essing like digital, and then I got a few other random like I like really like the like Oxford inflator and like a couple other random bits and pieces. Very, very occasionally I will use digital reverbs in mastering, but that's like 1 in 1,000 tracks. And then I used to do a bit of like clipping and stuff, but now I got new converters and I just clip my converters, so I don't really do too much of that digital. But yeah, that's honestly mostly limiting.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And so like we mentioned at the start, you are into a bit of the live scene as well.
Yeah.
In terms of live mixing, and that's at the moment a lot of what you're doing. So you're out on the road with Summer Thieves.
Oh no, I'm out on the road with Strangely Arousing.
Strangely Arousing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh.
I knew it started with an S.
Yeah. One of the S bands.
Yeah.
I have an interesting fact about those guys.
Oh, yes?
I was actually doing sound at Navarre Lounge, and my partner went into labor with my daughter while I was doing sound for those guys.
Oh shit.
Yeah, for those guys. And I was just like, sorry, guys, I'm out. And they kind of got left without an in-house guy for that day.
I'm sure those guys will remember it. I'll mention it.
Because I used to do radio interviews at Free FM in Hamilton. And whenever those guys came in for a radio interview, it's like, hey, guys.
Yeah. God damn.
By the way, remember that time?
I'm that guy.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Right, so you're working with them at the moment?
Yeah, I'm doing we did them at because I was also front of house on for one of the stages, and then we've got. It's one of those things where I feel weird calling it a tour. I hate being one of those people that it's a tour, and it's but we're doing a couple shows most weeks. So this week we're doing. This probably won't come out when this won't be out this week. Yeah. In the past,
a couple weeks ago,
in the past, a while ago, we're doing Galatos, and then got shows in a few venues that I haven't got to do before, which is real cool. We're going to do Butter Factory, and then
on. Yeah, cool.
I've heard that's a bit of a hit and miss venue as far as turnout's concerned.
Oh yeah, I think most of the Stranger tours selling real well.
Nice.
Good. We play. I mean, they're from Rotorua, but we went to Rotorua the other week, and that went off. It's quite funny because the gig finished at 1 a.m. But then we had some dudes playing real good drum and bass sets till 3 a.m. and it's Rotorua, so there's no clubs and shit. There's one down there, and all the pubs are kind of fucking closing. So heaps of people just kept paying the door charge to just come in and have this 2 hours of drum and bass and just fucking lines out the door, and it was this is.
Yeah,
weird.
we'll take this.
Yeah, but sweet, this is perfect, man.
Yeah.
Just desperate.
Yeah. Music happening, fuck yeah. Let's do it.
Because what got you into the live thing?
I actually came in more through live when I was engineering. So I used to do theater stuff years ago. I mean, I still do a little bit of theater, but I was one of those theater kids.
Yeah.
I can picture that.
Yeah, I did community theater and stuff, and then I think one of my first ever shows I did was our theater had a fucking CD changer, and it was here's your 20 discs for sound effects, and you'd be put it in the CD changer, play track 2, and fucking quickly swap, and be oh, is the gunshot one? Shit, put that in, play it. Just do a little Soundcraft console and some real bad speakers, and then that evolved into. I did a musical there through definitely less than nominal gear. Was probably my first kind of array into actually mixing a full show. Was went from CD changer with some sound effects to. Here's 14 wireless mics through a analog console that doesn't even have fucking high pass filters. Your left and rights are going to be going out mono into this bearing of feedback reduction unit because the people in the show are going to be in front of the fucking PA, and you don't have any graphic EQs or anything. And I'd never done a show like this before, so I'm trying to figure out all the mutes and shit. And it was it worked. All the mics were up. We nuked half the PA one night because I kind of told the band, I was it's one of those real big changes where you've got to go through and you've got to be doing all it's not hit next scene and it susses all my DCAs. I was guys, this is a hard scene. Treat yourself as if you're on stage 10 seconds before you're on stage, because I'll be doing the mutes and stuff. And one of the leads decided that he totally didn't want to be on stage and was going to be tying his shoelace next to the sub on his on the mic without a high pass filter. So we toasted half the PA on that show, which was real fun. I think that's the show that I learned to be the most relaxed on, which was real cool.
Yeah,
right on.
And then
because you've only got so much that you can control for.
Yeah,
I did that show and I was stressing out, and a mate came up to me and he was kind of just what are you freaking out about? I'm half the PA's fucked, and he's can you fix it? I'm probably. And he was if you can, go fix it. Don't stress out about it. And I was what if I can't? He was well, then you can't.
Yeah.
Who cares? And I was but what if there's people here that are judging me? It was it's not their job. So and I was I'm the most relaxed I've ever been.
Yeah.
Half my PA doesn't
One
work.
of those things that's
Yeah. And I tried to just carry that forever. But and then we played in bands and stuff, so I played in algorithms and things, and kind of just did that classic I'm a guitarist / engineer thing, and started you know, I did like Ding Dong Lounge in the early days before they like built the stage, and it was on that little fucking PV mixer. I remember I did like one of my first shows there on this like little box, and I was kind of getting my way around it. Then BFM rocks up and it's like, we're recording it. Can you give us an auxiliary out and mix it? And I was like,
no pressure.
Does it look like I can?
Yeah, it kind of like got that working for them, and then, you know, like just random bars and stuff. So I started doing like Backbeat.
Yep.
Did a bunch of shows at like
rest in peace.
Rest in Peace Backbeat. Did Seal, did a bunch of shows in like the main room, did a bunch of shows in like the art room and stuff, which was real fun, getting spin kicked while doing sound. And then like doing theatre the whole time along as well. So I worked for like a couple of just like small companies doing, like, you know, like those like general like run of the mill like school theatre shows, and doing the few community theatre shows that could pay to afford sound and stuff. And then there's this kind of weird gap where I don't really know how I kept doing live sound. I did Portland Public House for a bit, which, I did there for a while. It's quite funny. I held on to there for probably like a year, and I think I only did sound there like 4 or 5 times in that last year, because I kind of just like held on to it, and like just being like, you know, like, I mean, I did sound there a bit and stuff, and they had a few people, but I kind of just used it to like bring people through that wanted to like learn sound and stuff, and kind of, because you know, like it's a small venue. They pay what they can and that sort of stuff. So I was just using it to like bring people through and stuff, to like train people and all that sort of thing. And then started doing stuff for like bigger companies and doing stuff for like Wavefront, and now I mostly do like front of house and festival stuff. So I mostly work with like Tritone and that. We put Adamson rigs out, and kind of through that got into like the whole doof scene. So now we do like Shipwrecked, Explore, all the like ARM events and stuff, which is like a real good time. And then I do that people fly me around to mix like death metal bands and stuff, which I love, because I don't get to mix as much metal anymore, but every time I do, it's the most wholesome thing. I really
it's like the throwback for you a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny because people still kind of like turn around, they're like, you're the metal guy, and I'm like last year one of my like bread and butter incomes was like Friday, Saturday I was mixing at this bar out in East Auckland doing covers, and people are like, you're the metal guy, and I'm like, I've been mixing covers for a fucking year. Like, how's that still my and it's funny, kind of like, and people like come back and do more metal and stuff, and you know, like I don't know, I do try to finish as many gigs as I can. That's not there anymore, so like I'm just got asked to do like a bunch of real cool shows all summer with heaps of bands. So we're doing like Shipwrecked, we're doing Explore, we're doing a bunch of cool shows, doing the Strangely Arousing shows. I think I just got booked to do some stuff with like Albie and the Wolves and stuff.
Nice.
Which is like,
right on.
Just like
cool
heaps of bands I really respect are like asking me to do stuff, which is just like
it's a good position to get to.
It's real. I'm stoked.
It's like, okay, all this time they've been putting into this.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. Well, because I turned around a while ago, because like I've always, you know, like when I started, like I finished school and I started studying, and I went into SAE, and I wasn't one of those people who just studied. I did the 40 hours or whatever you do at SAE a week, and I was working, and I was trying to start my freelance career. So I was doing like 110-hour weeks, and I was like mostly doing like 80 to 110-hour weeks for like 3 or 4 years of my life. And I was dead set on that whole, like, I'm going to be the fucking best mastering engineer. I'm going to be the best live sound engineer. And then, I totally burnt myself out. Yeah. It's really bad.
That had happened with that intensity.
There's definitely a few, like, kind of weird chats with doctors where they're being like, why did you collapse vomiting blood? And I was like, like 5 months of 100-hour weeks. What you going to do about it? But then kind of just turned around and was like, there's nothing wrong with just, like, because I was like, I want to be the guy mixing on the biggest stages and doing the biggest stuff. And then I was like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I love it. It's cool with the bigger shows I do. Like, I love everything. But, like, what's wrong with mixing bars? There's, like, nothing wrong with that. Most of my favorite engineers are just, like, they do everything, especially in New Zealand. Like, you've got to be able to do everything. Like, I can't be mixing to 20,000 people every day. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And, like,
dude,
and
here we totally have local heroes.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, and it's like nobody else in the room has heard of them except for you, and you're just like, yes, I'm a big fan.
Obsessed,
obsessed with
Mark
you.
from King's Arms and Whammy now, like...
Oh, dude, when I first started, like, I'd never really been one of those people to be like, there's all those people that start out, and I remember going to, like, SA, and all these people like, who's your favorite, like, mix engineers and shit? And I'm like, I've never been one of those people to know other people. So people were like, oh, you're into mastering, like, who are your favorite mastering engineers? And I'm like, I know like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, live, and people were spouting off their favorite live engineers, or like, you know, if someone talked about like Chris Lord-Alge when we like, after a while of studying, everyone's like, he's done amazing records, and I was like, who?
Yeah.
And they're like, you're a fucking mix engineer, you don't know him. And I'm like, I might have taken, like, I might have learnt from his records, but I don't fucking know who
the
he is.
dude.
I've never been one of those.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, maybe it was a downfall of like never being like, look at a record and looking up who engineered it and that sort of stuff. But yeah, and people like, oh, you know, live, blah, 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 like talking about all these huge tours overseas and their favorite engineers that were mixing like Green Day and shit. And I'm like, Mark's the fucking best engineer I know. He's
Yeah.
the nicest person.
He's, dude, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just so stoked, like, when I got to, like, go into King's Arms. And, like, you know, I like, that's what's cool about things like that. It's like, you know, there'll be some people who will idolize international engineers or massive engineers, like, so much. And it was like, what's stopping you feeling the same about the guys that mixing your band at the local bar? Like,
Yeah.
just some of the nicest people around. And they put in some fucking hard mahi for the scene and shit. And,
Yeah.
like, yeah. But, yeah,
Doing live sound 5 days, like, well, for what King's Arms was doing at the time, 5 day, like I think it was pretty much 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Like it's hard work.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Miami's at that now. They're like pretty much. I've liked the rise of this. You know, when we had like, I don't really want to say like more venues, but like now there's like a need for the venues that we have to be doing gigs like most days, which is cool for me as a live sound guy. Like I'm mostly that kind of like Friday, Saturday sort of kind of vibe for doing sound and stuff. I love that there's like Wednesday, Thursday gigs. I like being able to be like on a Thursday night.
It keeps the scene a little more vibrant.
Yeah, it's so good. I just like, you know, those were my favorite gigs to play as well. Like when we used to go play the nights at like Ding on a Wednesday and stuff. And I was like, man, even if there's 10 people here, it's the fucking best Wednesday night I could have asked for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I saw a post from Tiki Tane recently, and he was posing with Richie Allen, saying that like music, like there's few musicians that are live engineers, and there's like a different relationship as a musician that's performing on those stages as well as the guy that's in front or that's in front of it mixing it and stuff like that. And do you find you flow with the music differently, being like, I mean, I know it's hard, you can't compare it to not being a musician, but like, do you feel you flow with the music quite organically when you are mixing?
Like it's interesting you bring that, because like something I'd always kind of tried to do when I started in like anything that I like strive to do well, I like to have been on the other side, because I like to me it's knowing the points of view. I want to know how that musician feels up there, which to me is like really important for monitors. A musician's asking something, but I want to know how they feel. I want to know what they do, but then also, you know, knowing how they feel up there should influence me. And then also, like it's feeling music as a musician's real important, especially like, you know, like listen to stuff like Richie mixes and that, like with core and stuff. It's like, man, he's throwing like sick dubs. You've got to be able to feel the music to throw dubs like those guys. And same with like Tiki and stuff as well. It's just like, it's funny because I spent a few years just like kind of looking around and being like, I wonder who makes the best engineers. And there's this like weird hard debate between like drummers or guitarists kind of being the best engineers. Yeah. I'm like, just kind of looked around and I was like, there's heaps of my favorite like engineers were like also drummers, and I was like, man, did I fall short on being a guitarist? Kind of becoming an engineer, but it's maybe you're a little bit sort of like looser than if you're a drummer. It's also it's also real funny looking around at guys like, you know, like Richie and stuff, because like I'd known. I didn't realize he used to like mix core and stuff. Like I knew him from, like he kind of came to light in the stuff I did when he started doing like heavy metal ninjas and stuff, and I was fucking obsessed. And I was like, that's awesome. And then finding out he was a live sound guy, and I was like, how did I even know? Same with fucking Tiki Tane. I was like, I knew Tiki as the acoustic guitarist that everyone at my school played his fucking song, and it drilled my head in. And then finding out that Tiki is one of the like the best engineers that New Zealand has to offer was just fucking something else. I always enjoy like telling like flatmates and stuff that are in the music industry. I'm like, how do you know Tiki? And they're like, oh, Tiki plays that like acoustic song. I'm like, Tiki is like half the reason fucking drum and bass exists in this country, and Tiki is one of the best fucking engineers that has ever walked this earth. And it's just like, but and like, does that also come from his background as like music? You know, like a lot of engineers, it's one of those things of like, do people end up being engineers because of their involvement in the music scene, or does their involvement in the music scene also make them a better engineer, and that's why they stick around? Kind of
and
stuff.
Sometimes it could be like I often feel like they're forced into it at an occasion. So either like, okay, they're at this venue about to play, something's happened, the guy hasn't shown up. fuck it, the gig's about to start. Let's just make something happen.
You're an all ages band at a fucking church gig, and the vocal PA rocks up and doesn't work, and you're like, I mean, that's how I got into it. Oh, he's the guy that can get vocals through foldback. Stuff like that. And it's like,
Same. Yeah. That's how I got into it. And it was the same with like getting into recording from the beginning. There was a band. We were in a band. We thought we were really cool. You know, and they were like, hey, so we need to record our stuff. Couldn't go out and do it. One of us thought that we were the coolest one to be able to do it. That was me. And then, you know, failed miserably. That's what got me into it.
I had a weird like revisit a while ago where like I have a real terrible memory, but I like went back and there was like records I did not realize that I had done. And I kind of found them again and looked back and I was like, oh, shit, man, what was I doing? I remember like I was at SA and I took out my like $1,000 that you're supposed to use for course related costs, like fuck. And I went and bought a Motu 4 Pre and I went and bought an SM57. I was like, this is all I need. I got my 57. I still have that same 57. It's beat up as shit. And I was like, I have an SM57. I can conquer the fucking world with this mic. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I was dead set. I'm like, I'm going to record everything with this. And man, like, I don't.
I mean, was that the same 57 you used for vocal when you were doing for algorithms?
Yeah.
Nice.
I remember seeing you singing into a 57. I was like, that dude's got balls.
Like, I really like. I kind of had it on purpose. I never want to be one of those like. I'm totally one of those like anti-cup the mic people to an extent, but like I use the 57 live because like you can get real nitty and gritty with them. You can almost stick the whole like it's way easier than a 58 to just stick that thing in your mouth. And like plosives will just rip that mic apart compared to a 58, and I really like that because I could just get like. We weren't supposed to be like super clean and smooth and stuff, and I just like the fact that there's this whole mic that I could just put in my hands and make sound absolutely disgusting and piss off the engineer and just tear it up with plosives and just it's good. It's good.
Because that band had a few interesting events. I showed Jake the picture.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, of Bailey.
Yes. Jesus Christ.
That it's insane how far that story and those images and everything went.
It's getting posted up on like The Guardian and stuff. The thing I found the funniest with it is a lot of people were like turning around, they're like, man, this must have done like great things for your band. And I was like, I think that week that we got posted on like The Guardian and a bunch of places, I think we got fucking like 10 plays on Bandcamp. And it was like first 30 seconds and then stopped. And people were like, oh, that's weird. And I was like, you would have done exactly what I fucking did, which was like click on the article, read like the first 2 sentences. Scroll down, look at the photo, pictures. Gone, fuck, that's gross, and then close the tab.
That's
like, no one's being like, oh, this guy broke his leg. I wonder what their music sounds like. Everyone was like, oh man, you must have so many streams, like sold more copies. I was like, that's not how people consume media. That's not what we fucking do.
The only way that would happen is if there was a link to the song at the top of the page. Or not even a link, but like a streamable thing.
Automatically. And then it would have been like, you would have got the plays for the amount of time that it would take them to like look at the photo. And I'm still so salty though. It happened like Bailey could have picked a better time to fuck himself up because like it was right around the time that like Dave Grohl broke his leg. So like, Bailey's suffering in a cast or whatever, but we all had to stand there while people were telling Dave Grohl jokes the whole time, which was almost fucking worse. And I think we opened for like Protest the Hero, and like obviously we had a very ecstatic live show where it'll romp around and look real grumpy and stuff, and Bailey's just sitting there and I'm like, I feel weird.
It's not quite
I don't really want to go nuts with this. And like it's always real funny hearing like stories back from when we used to play and stuff, and people being like, oh, you're that band. I mean, we were talking to someone because we did this show out in like Pakuranga. We did like an all ages show in Pakuranga. And we were that real cringe band that was like, we're gonna fucking turn all the lights off and put like light candles and stuff. And someone was like, oh, you were that fucking band. And I was like,
that was us.
We were.
At least it left a lasting image though. It might be a black image, but it's a lasting one. Because what made you, like, did you get into, obviously the scene you're in now is a bit different than the sort of like death metal vibes of what kind of Algorithm was, and obviously like you're saying, you still go into it a bit as well, but when did that kind of transition come about? Was it something you're always into, or did you just kind of like gravitate towards it over time?
It's kind of been like an overtime thing. So, like, the scenes that I was in is like a product of what I was exposed to. So, like, always into metal. I got into metal through like the classic, like real cringy ways of being like, oh, I like Breaking Benjamin. That has a one scream. And then like listen to Blind Spot and was like, that's cool. And then kind of like listen to Evanescence. And then was like, let's fucking listen to the real cringe, like metalcore bands and stuff. And then just heavier constantly. Like I've realized to an extent, I like anything in the fringe of any genres, like hyper genre for like anything is where I'm at. Like the heaviest
extremes.
of the metals, the grindiest of the cores.
Yeah.
Anything like super pop to the teeth, I fucking love. Like people like presume that because you're into like heavy stuff and it's like, no, I'm just into extreme. Like Dua Lipa is extremely pop and I'm all here for it and like super indie stuff and that. But yeah, it's kind of, I only really got opened up to like other kinds of music by like it's always been like via association of what I work with. So when I started doing like, you know, like mastering, I've got to do like any genres and all genres. And it was funny because I thought I'd be pigeonholed as the metal guy. And the more mastering I did, the like I do a lot of metal and stuff, but like I just do everything. People send me whatever, and like I love working on like everything and that sort of stuff. But then like for live, it's been if you're not like a house guy in New Zealand, like if you're not like a house guy at a place that does metal, you're probably not going to mix too much metal because like not many metal bands can
bring in their own.
Yeah, there's not too many people that can afford their own front of house guy and stuff for like bigger shows and that sort of thing. So since I kind of drifted away to like other kind of standard jobs and stuff, and I'm not like a venue guy, I don't tend to mix as much metal. And then the music that I make now is like a lot more influenced by the scenes that I'm a lot more involved in, and I'm kind of like just in the hippie doof bass scene. And I've always like, I actually looked back a while ago because I released this like Wob Chaser record like a few weeks back. It was all dark and bassy and stuff, and I looked back and I was like, I've actually been making electronic music since like 2014. But I'd never found my stride with it. Yeah. And then just going to more and more gigs and realizing that there's just like dark, nasty, disgusting music that...
Again, that fringe of that genre.
Fringe, I'm like, I just want just fucking bass lines and stuff. And just, like, it's also like, I go do so many gigs on like, you know, big rigs with like heaps of subs and stuff. I was like, no one plays exactly what I want to hear. Yeah. So I'm just going to make my own songs to like murder some PAs with and just, you know, test how low they can go and all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's some artists that are putting out like, that I've kind of, you know, it's one of those things that people are always like, oh, the type of music I like doesn't exist. And you're like, you just haven't found it yet. Yeah. And now
there is like, so much music out there.
Like, oh, we did like God, was it last year or the year before, one of the ones, and I'm like, you know, this is the kind of music I want to play. And then Truth did a DJ set, and I was like, Truth is fucking immaculate. And now there's like artists like, you know, I've found like, but you know, like I've done a bunch of gigs with like Paige Julia and stuff, and I'm like, this is fucking immaculate. Like, this is what I want to hear. This is awesome. And just like, yeah. And that kind of just, you know, the scenes I'm kind of floating around has influenced what I'm doing and stuff. But yeah, like I try not to be tied to any genres, but I also totally like heaps of shit. Like I kind of like everything. There's something in everything that I will like. Yeah. Just kind of handy. But yeah.
I'm the same with film. Yeah. So even if it's a god awful movie, I'll find some way of enjoying it. And god awful even like in a non-redeemable way. Yeah. Like not in a so bad it's good kind of way, even just like actual bad. I'll still find
the best day.
I'll still find like a way to appreciate certain aspects of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I've definitely got my guilty pleasures. Like when it comes to music, you've got that band that is just, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
See, I try to be in the like, I always say, I try to be in the like, nah, there's no guilty pleasures. There's just shit you just like really like.
Dude, there's stuff that I really like. There's this guy who plays music and it's so bad. And he's from New Zealand. So what,
you like country music or?
I'm on board with that one.
Yeah. No, like I used to play this guy at parties just to troll people. So I'd like, if somebody was really precious about their playlist that they had going on, like they have a YouTube playlist.
Everyone's cringing just secretly. Just
and I'm just like, all right, here goes. I'm going to put on the worst music that I know. And then eventually it evolved to being, I really like this guy.
Love this. Yeah. Yeah, that's what say.
Yeah.
You were saying like, because with, like you don't want to be pigeonholed as like a certain guy that does a certain music and stuff like that. Do you find, because the way that I kind of see it is almost like mastering doesn't necessarily have that pigeonholed thing, whereas like say mix engineers are a lot more likely to get put in that category.
Yeah, mixing is not that it necessarily should be, but mixing can end up being a lot more of like imparting your own personal tastes on stuff. Like, I mean, in like an ideal world or something, like it's kind of like two flows. It's like, you know, you're like, especially in like mixing, it's like you're obviously translating the artist's vision, but you can be doing it creatively yourself or creatively through them. You know, like you're doing what they would do creatively, but you're just doing it because you have the knowledge to understand and do it. Mastering, you do... It's a removal of that. Like I don't want to say like you shouldn't, or like I shouldn't be like creatively imparting on tracks, because it sounds like a removal of myself from what I'm doing, but it also like totally is. I'm there to translate what the band and what the mix engineer has decided. Like, I can do that creatively, and there are obviously like better technical ways to do it and stuff, but like, yeah, like it's... Which is, and that's why it's kind of been cool to been sent stuff across all genres. People aren't like, Luke makes metal sound good. Isn't what people should be thinking. It's just like, I can just translate mix as well.
It's almost like you're trying to like put yourself in their seat, and just trying to optimize their vision.
I just want to remove myself from it.
Yeah,
like, you know, there's, and you kind of learn it earlier on, like, you know, especially in like mastering, you're like mixing and stuff, and you kind of like, you turn around and you're like, this is what I would like, and they turn back and say, what the fuck is this? What did you do? And you're like, I made it sound like this. And why? It's not what we wanted. And you've got to really just like, you're just sitting in a room full of hats, kind of just putting them on and stuff. And I always like joke about that with bands, of like doing like records and stuff. Like I did this indie record and I like rolled up my jeans and put on my socks and just tried to dress like an indie kid for a day. And I'm like, I don't want to think like me. You know, like I've got my craft should be in learning the tools that I have so I can translate other people's visions, which is like, it's just what I want to do.
Awesome.
And it's almost like a separation from maybe like a producer seat to like a mix engineer seat. You know?
Like I've always been real interested in producing, but it's not something that I've ever really done too much of. And it's something that like I've consciously stayed like a little bit away from. Like I've kind of been interested to get into it a little bit again recently, because I've been doing some cool projects that I'm like, I think I could have produced this in a way that would have made it, you know, just like change the output of it a little bit or something. But I've always just like, it's not a mindset that you know, in that same way that I was saying before, it's like I kind of like to have always done the other thing because it can make me think in the same way. There's certain decisions in producing that I don't think are my opinion at all in mastering. Like I obviously deal with producers for the overall sonics and stuff, but you know, like I'm definitely not sitting there in mastering being like, oh man, if they half-timed these kicks, it would have been cool. You can't even get anywhere near that, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's confined with what you can do as far as the product that you're delivered. So obviously if there's something that's different in the mix, I'm not going to say bad in the mix, but just different in the mix, there was a decision made that led that to, maybe they didn't quite know or intend it, and you can go and say, hey, did you mean to do this? But other times it's more like, okay, that's what they want to do. Let's
I'm always real big on that, and it's something that I've always pushed towards, like with, you know, there's like the birth of or the digital mastering software and all that stuff, which is not mastering.
E-masters.
It's a lander and stuff. Which is it's not mastering.
It's loud.
And it's like, you know, like to me, like big parts of mastering is like, you know, like is something like Lander going to turn around and be like, hey, there's actually some clips and pops in your vocal take, or like, hey, you drove your pre a little bit hard. Do you even want to just send me that file and I'll RX it and you can drop it back into your mix? Or, you know, like people will send me stuff and like, my job will have been done at mastering if I can also potentially make the mix better before we even like master it. And it's something I really strive for. Like it's why I try to get like, you know, like I'm not, I'll do stuff at super fast turnarounds, but if people are like, can we master it today? I'm like, but like what if we could have made this better? You know, like my ears are there for potentially picking up faults and stuff. You know, like I've helped people move their speakers around in their rooms and sort out issues with like, you know, nodal frequencies and all that sort of stuff. And just like, like if I can help with a mix before it even gets to mastering, like that's what my ears are there for. And then it comes to mastering and then I can help it. But, you know, sometimes that like realized vision just like needs a little bit of help kind of thing from like a, you know, like I obviously like you kind of get into mastering and there's stuff. It's always that thing of like, sometimes in mastering, it's like, you know what, like I could do this. I could pull out some freaky tools and kind of make this better, but everything you do in mastering's got a negative effect, and that's not something that I want to impart on things. And also, like, I could totally freak around with some stuff and duck the guitars down in this frequency range, but then I wouldn't have developed this relationship with the mix engineer, and we wouldn't have, like, I might get that problem on the next 5 mixes. Well, we could have just figured it out. I'm real keen.
If we fix if we address the root cause, and then they're going to learn from it. And it's the whole imparting of knowledge thing as well.
And you've got to so you've got to be like cautiously wording about it sometimes, because it's like, I remember like when I was first mastering, I turned around to a guy and I was like, "This is," I was like, we should think about this. It was something I was like. This was when I was like, first mastering stuff, and I was like, I was a little bit more into like I'm mastering stuff, and I turned around to someone and I was kind of like, hey, we could try tweak these in this ways, and they were like, but this is exactly what we want it to sound like. Like the vocal is supposed to fucking sound like that. Like the vocal is supposed to be 60 dB louder than everything else. Don't fucking duck it.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Like this is specifically what we wanted. It might be not what you think, but it's exactly what we want. And like, I'm never place myself above someone else and being like, your decision isn't the correct one, because like it's fucking their art, it's not mine.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's a good way to approach it as well. Like people can get caught up in who they are and imparting them on something.
Yeah.
Which, like you're saying, from a mixing perspective, oftentimes people are hiring people or getting in touch with people for their taste.
For that, yeah.
Whereas the transition into mastering, like you're saying, you're trying to almost remove yourself from it and just be them. But
I mean, there will
with
be
those tools.
There's always going to end up being some kind of like taste things in that. Like I noticed there's some people be like, I like, I feel like I've had people come and be like, I like you because this is what we kind of know will happen. Yeah. But then it's like, is that a taste or is that just like an expected outcome kind of thing?
And then you're going to turn around and give them something that's not that. You're like, fuck you. You don't pigeonhole me.
Yeah. I'm going to give you too much low end this time.
I'm going to blow your speakers when you try and like listen to this back.
That's what my solo project's for, to try to blow people's speakers up.
Yeah.
I got the best compliment on that I think I always like to, my like musical journey for my like own music is just like stapled by these like kind of like insults that I really, really, not even insults, but just things that I really like. Like when we did the algorithm stuff, someone was like, I thought my CD was skipping because the same riff kept playing over and over again. And I kept checking my CD player and thought it was broken. And I was like, nah, this is the best. And then Web Chase came out and someone's like, I thought my fucking speakers were, Richie was like, I thought my speakers were broken. And I was like,
nice.
Yeah.
That's the way.
Yeah.
Trolling the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will anyone pick up on it? Thanks heaps for coming on, bro. It's been awesome talking to you. We'll definitely have to do it again sometime.
Oh, hell yeah. Super keen.
It's fucking
super keen. I feel like we could just talk shit for another like 6 hours.
Straight up.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to plug or anything like that before we sign off?
I don't know, just get your tracks mastered by me, eh?
Yeah.
Get your tracks mastered by me and book me to be a front of house engineer.
Yeah.
Real cool.
Where can people find you?
Actually, I might be doing a slight swap up on stuff soon. I've been debating around the whole Primal Mastering and whether all of my stuff fits under this one bubble. So there might be a little change around that coming soon. Awesome. Otherwise, like Primal Mastering on Facebook or Primal Mastering on Instagram, or I'm Luke at primalmastering.com. I'm fancy and got my own domain. Yeah, boy. At the moment everything's under that. So like if you want like in live sound, if you want mixing, man, like I'm always just down to chat and yarn with people and mix critiques and stuff. Sometimes even if stuff's not coming to me for mastering, I just like to help people out and things.
Wicked, man.
Yeah, anyone wants to nerd out with me about gear, just
keep us up to date with all of that, because we'll update what we're doing so everybody can.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll sort of let people know.
Sweet. Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been real cool.
Yeah, it's awesome meeting you finally.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's always we kind of like float in that like parallel lines and never meet, and now we finally kind of just like.
No, I've heard your name tons, and it's just like finally we're in the same room.
Tell people to stop name dropping me.
Yeah, gosh,
it's enough of it.
Yeah. Thanks heaps for watching. And check out other episodes. Cheers. Smooth outro.
Cruisy.